So good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who have not seen me sometime in the past 2 weeks, my name is Michelle Thornton, and I am our current Accessibility Fellow Coordinator. Today is day 9 of our 10-day accessibility challenge, which is mind-blowing to me. It's been a whirlwind. What that means is that although winter breakouts end today, we do still have one more day of the challenge on Monday, but that is much more kind of reflection on your own thinking kinds of things. So this is our last official accessibility synchronous session that's happening as part of the challenge. I'm going to ask and encourage everybody actually to, if you don't mind, put your cameras on. There is kind of at least a couple of different opportunities that during today's session that since we're talking about building culture and building communicating, I'd love to hear from some of you guys on kind of your thoughts and perspectives on that. So of course it's not required. You don't have to have your camera on, but a little bit easier for me to see who's here and who's able to participate. So we are going to be doing a couple of things. My agenda includes kind of reflecting on the challenge and how that contributes to building a campus culture around accessibility. I do have some new things to share with you, I think, about some best practices in this space. We will watch a short video and then wrap up with sort of how to move forward. How can you kind of take some of the things that you have learned here, build on those, and continue kind of contributing to that new space we're trying to develop. So for starters, I kind of want to circle back to where we started, and that was a conversation about who was participating, what was the purpose of this challenge, what were we doing here? I think that this was a bit of an experiment, and I know I don't want to speak for myself, for Kate and for Rebecca, for anybody on the Accessibility Practices Committee, but we weren't sure exactly what to expect or how many people would participate. But what we do know is that the response was pretty fantastic. So we had nearly 200 people sign up, and that is from all sorts of roles and departments and programs across campus. So we had faculty, students, administrators, staff, basically in great representation across campus, really diverse. And not only did that many people sign up to get these emails every day, but we have had just a remarkable participation even in the sessions themselves. So we had over 20 sessions happening during the winter breakout sessions, all kinds of information being absorbed, digested, and put into play. So that's really exciting. And I think I will, again, not wanting to speak for the presenters, but I've been really surprised to see sessions with over 50 people, all kinds of activity in the chats, really good questions, and then lots of good follow-up in our drop-in sessions in the afternoon where people are clearly trying to implement some of the things that we've been talking about and learning about over the past couple of weeks. So maybe before we kind of jump too far in, I want to just open this up to any of for those of you who are here, any of your thoughts on the last 2 weeks, kind of things that were eye-opening to you, surprising as being part of it, just any kind of other initial reflections. And maybe I'll put somebody on the spot. Kate appears to have put a comment in the chat box. Kate, why don't you just share with the group kind of your reactions as well?
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, I mean, this is the first time we've piloted any kind of program that's been anything like this. Up until this point, accessibility has been very retroactive. You know, people put their documents in their courses and whatnot, and we go through and try to fix it and trying to explain it like one person at a time or one department at a time. And we've never really done anything so widely spread. So we really had no idea what to expect. And I think the first day we had like 50 people sign up or something. And I was just absolutely blown away. And then by the end of the challenge, we had, I think the final count was 198. And I was just absolutely floored that so many people on the campus, not necessarily surprised that so many people are interested in accessibility, but just, I guess I didn't realize the interest was out there. It always felt like a push, like you should do this, you need to do this, please come do this. And when we finally opened this up and we had all these many people responded, it was like, oh, people actually want to learn how to do this. So it's not like pushing it on someone. It's like, okay, I have this information I'm willing to share with you and I'm happy to help. So it was really kind of eye-opening for me in that manner. And I think it's been really great to be available and to just help so many people and get the questions that we've gotten and to see so much interest in so many different people.
Other thoughts or reactions?
Yeah, I had one. I just want to say that there was so much that I didn't know before, and just because I attended this and I came almost every day that I was available, I realized there's still so much I don't know. But educators hopefully like to learn, and this is great information. And I've said to a couple of you that this really should be mandatory, like we take those sexual harassment trainings and all that, because especially today with all the inequalities in the media and all of that, this is so important, especially now that I had no idea how I don't know. My documents are much better now. Like Kate said, I'll do baby steps, change little things at a time, and I'm just grateful. This has been very eye-opening and educational. So good, well done, all of you, on your pilot program here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other immediate thoughts?
Well, definitely made more work for me in orientation. I got to go through all our emails. But as I was going through some of them yesterday, I was like, oh yeah, that's got to change. That's got to change. So it's good to be aware of it now. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does feel like it adds stuff to the to-do list, right? At least at the outset. I think that's right.
But once you get over the initial hurdle though, like, oh my gosh, I have to do all this. Once you start doing it, especially if you can break it down and do it in little baby steps, you're like, oh, that's not so bad. Okay, well now I'll just incorporate that into all my future emails or documents or whatever. And it becomes easier every step that you go along.
All right. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. I do have a few, like I said, things that I'd like to share with you, and talking kind of in a more formal way about this idea of building a culture around accessibility. We've kind of thrown everyone kind of headfirst into this during this challenge, right? Giving you all kinds of new tools, resources. And I want to kind of spend some time today thinking about that from a little bit of a higher level, thinking about the big picture, like why are we really doing that? What is sort of those ultimate goals, and what do we do next? So give me just a moment here and I will pull up my slides. Oh, I think that's the first time I hit actually present instead of share to start with. So this is a win. All right, so I'm going to kind of follow a model that is sort of a mashup from two different resources. One from an organization called Explore Access that has a lot of very campus focused tools and resources around building a culture of accessibility. And then a second one that not surprisingly, right, comes out of the business world a little bit and is thinking more just organizationally about dynamics within organizations and how to create a culture, but also how to shift organizational cultures. So I kind of pulled those two things together and I've come up with these four, kind of the way that I'm thinking about it is streams or approaches. So we'll start one, we're going to talk about kind of knowledge building that includes things like training and mentoring. Two is having a strategy that's informed by that knowledge. Three is where things get a little bit tougher and a little bit trickier, right? This idea of shifting perspectives or changing the way that we're thinking. And then fourth is building community or kind of an advocacy mindset, increasing visibility. So, oops, went a little fast. So these first two, the idea of training and knowledge, and the second one around strategy, you've heard a lot about this week. We have, or these 2 weeks, we have talked at length about the different resources that are available. We've showcased some of those for you. We have encouraged you to start kind of taking some steps to use those resources and putting them into motion. And I think as an organization, we're doing a really good job in this space. I think we've put a lot of sort of time, effort, and intention into building those resources out and making them available. I think as Kate mentioned, I think this is the first time that we've really broadened our scope of trying to increase awareness around them and getting them in the hands of more people. And so I think we definitely still have more work to do there. 200 people out of a pretty big campus still is scratching the surface to some extent. So we've got a good infrastructure around knowledge building and training and resources around accessibility. And now it's really about rolling that out in a more expansive way. So just as a reminder, the things that we know that are going to be really kind of the hub of this is our digital accessibility website. That's where trainings will live. We will also be having some links back to the different recordings from this session. We also have informed you guys about the DQ training tool. And while we've said this has been in flux a little bit over the course of the challenge, we thought we were losing that in February. So we're really encouraging people to take advantage of it right away. But now we've got a little bit more cushion on that, and we'll have the access to that through the end of the semester. We just found that out today. I changed my slides literally moments before this session. And then ongoing SALT sessions, we expect to be doing some stuff certainly along the way and with spring breakouts as well. You guys know also we've got our accessibility fellows who you should expect to be seeing out in your spaces over the next few months. They'll be doing things like sharing information at department meetings or school-wide meetings. And our hope is that we'll be able to continue that program moving forward. So we encourage faculty members that are part of this challenge to take advantage of that as well. We've also talked a lot about the broader strategy at Oswego. We've got all kinds of people working on accessibility, different groups that are taking off different chunks of that, and we've just revealed our accessibility plan. And I think one thing that we heard about as well at the beginning of this was this idea of incorporating accessibility under the broader umbrella of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we know that there's space within that office and those initiatives to be thinking about this as well. So I like to think that there's a good foundation, and we've got a strong team and a lot of resources and focus on this. So I think though, when we start to get to these next couple of areas, we need to spend a little bit more time thinking about it. And we haven't given as much attention, even within the challenge, to these last couple of pieces. So that's where I want to spend the bulk of my presentation today. And this first part is thinking about shifting perspectives. I heard a little bit in the reflections, right, about not knowing what you don't know, being more cognizant, kind of the exposure to these different resources and tools and the reasons behind why we might want to incorporate them sort of naturally starts to shift our perspective, right? Traditionally, I think that there could be some sort of negative connotations, or we could be thinking about disability from this place of where it creates problems either for the individual or for the people around it. There's all kinds of things included here that are in the bullet points that are sort of like triggered reactions historically when we would think about, or even in some cases talk about, disability. And I think that some of that comes from a space of being uninformed. Other parts of it come from exposure, or in some pieces of it just are that maybe in some cases we don't know how to talk or think about or engage in conversations around both disability and accessibility. One thing that when I kind of get to the end of this list, and I think we're always a little cautious in our accessibility sessions in thinking about this as it relates to legislation or litigation, because this is really tricky in terms of, are we trying to do the things that we're doing, promote this culture because we're required to, because it's the law, because it's a function of the ADA or something like that? Or are we thinking about this because we want and we value and want to develop a more inclusive environment here on campus? And those two things could be pulling in the same direction, but oftentimes, I think when I talk about this and share information with fellow faculty members and people across campus, I'll hear, well, what are we required to do? What's the expectation? What must be done? What do I have to do for my course? And I think that perspective is something that we're trying to move away from a little bit in terms of thinking about this more in terms of what can we do? What do we want things to look like here on campus? So I think that that perspective where we kind of assign these negative traits, or we look at it as something that is a burden or a requirement or something we must be compliant with because the law is telling us to, is a form of ableism. You guys heard me speak about this at the very beginning of our challenge, and I want to circle back to this again. And the idea that if you've not heard this term before, essentially it is a form of discrimination against disabled people, and it essentially encompasses attitudes, beliefs, and practices that positioned the idea of being non-disabled as being somehow preferred or better than being disabled. And as a function of that, it winds up valuing some traits over others and promotes stereotypes. But if you want to know like sort of more concretely what that like actually looks like in practice, not just as a theoretical concept, it can be as sort of overt as using insulting terms. But maybe not even insulting terms, but terms that sort of highlight the disability over the individual themselves. I'll talk more about language here in a minute, so put a pin in that one. But also it could look like making assumptions about what a person can and can't do for themselves or what they need assistance with or not, without actually prioritizing their voice and giving that person the opportunity to state their needs versus assuming what they are able to do. And it also comes in the form of designing spaces, buildings, websites, learning materials that are inaccessible. That is a form of ableism as well. So changing our perspective in part requires us to start thinking about disability itself in a different way. And the quote here on the right is that disability isn't the problem. The problem is convincing others to see that this is not a problem and really challenging ourselves to think about this differently. And relocating this is that it's not a problem with the individual who may have a disability, but instead it's a problem with the space that we've created, whether that's physical, virtual, even to some degree, mental or emotional space around this. So we're going to take a quick pause here. I've got a short video to watch from this woman, Stella Young. She is an educator and speaker, and really kind of gets to this idea about shifting our thinking around the spaces that we create and how we kind of incorporate some different thinking and different perspectives into our culture building around accessibility. So that was like my quickest, I think, transition between two things ever before. So I'm very excited. You can tell that we're in the end of the second week. So I'm going to play this. Rebecca, I'm going to ask you if you can give me a thumbs up if you can hear the volume on this once it gets started.
Honestly, as long as you have a logo that looks good on
Sorry about that.
everything,
We're going to have to get through the...
and a Squarespace online store, you're set.
All right, hold on, folks. I spoke too soon on my excellent transition, it appears. All right. Let's try this one more time.
I grew up in a very small country town in Victoria. I had a very normal, low-key kind of upbringing. I went to school, I hung out with my friends, I fought with my younger sisters. It's all very normal. And when I was 15, a member of my local community approached my parents and wanted to nominate me for a Community Achievement Award. And my parents said, that's really nice, but there's kind of one glaring problem with that. She hasn't actually achieved anything. Yeah, and they were right. I went to school, I got good marks, I had a very low-key after-school job in my mum's hairdressing salon, and I spent a lot of time watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Dawson's Creek. Yeah, I know, what a contradiction. But they were right. I wasn't doing anything that was out of the ordinary at all. I wasn't doing anything that could be considered an achievement if you took disability out of the equation. Years later, I was on my second teaching round in a Melbourne high school, and I was about 20 minutes into a year 11 legal studies class when this boy put up his hand and said, "Hey, miss, when are you going to start doing your speech? And I said, what speech? You know, I'd been talking to them about defamation law for a good 20 minutes. And he said, you know, like your motivational speaking. You know, when people in wheelchairs come to school, they usually say like inspirational stuff. Yeah. It's usually in the big hall. And that's when it dawned on me. This kid had only ever experienced disabled people as objects of inspiration. We are not, you know, to this kid, and it's not his fault. I mean, that's true for many of us. You know, for lots of us, disabled people are not our teachers or our doctors or our manicurists. We're not real people. We are there to inspire. And in fact, you know, I'm sitting on this stage looking like I do in this wheelchair, and you are probably kind of expecting me to inspire you, right? Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you dramatically. I'm not here to inspire you. I'm here to tell you that we have been lied to about disability. Yeah, we've been sold the lie that disability is a bad thing. Capital B, capital T. It's a bad thing. And to live with disability makes you exceptional. It's not a bad thing, and it doesn't make you exceptional. And in the past few years, we've been able to propagate this lie even further via social media. You know, you may have seen images like this one. The only disability in life is a bad attitude. Or this one, your excuse is invalid, indeed. Or this one, before you quit, try. Yeah. These are just a couple of examples, but there are a lot of these images out there. You know, you might have seen the one, the little girl with no hands drawing a picture with a pencil held in her mouth. You might have seen a child running on carbon fibre prosthetic legs. And these images, you know, there are lots of them out there. They are what we call inspiration porn. And I use the term porn deliberately because they objectify one group of people for the benefit of another group of people. So in this case, we're objectifying disabled people for the benefit of non-disabled people. The purpose of these images is to inspire you, to motivate you, so that we can look at them and think, well, however bad my life is, it could be worse. I could be that person. But what if you are that person? I've lost count of the number of times that I've been approached by strangers wanting to tell me that they think I'm brave or inspirational. And this was long before my work had any kind of public profile. They were just kind of congratulating me for managing to get up in the morning and remember my own name. And it is objectifying. These images objectify disabled people for the benefit of non-disabled people. You know, they are there so that you can look at them and think that things aren't so bad for you, to put your worries into perspective. And life as a disabled person is actually somewhat difficult. We do overcome some things, but the things that we're overcoming are not the things that you think they are. They are not things to do with our bodies. I use the term disabled people quite deliberately because I subscribe to what's called the social model of disability, which tells us that we are more disabled by our bodies, the society that we live in rather, than by our bodies and our diagnoses. So I've lived in this body a long time. I'm quite fond of it. It does the things that I need it to do, and I've learnt to use it to the best of its capacity, just as you have. And that's the thing about those kids in those pictures as well. They're not doing anything out of the ordinary. They are just using their bodies to the best of their capacity. So is it really fair to objectify them in the way that we do, to share those images? People, when they say, you know, you're an inspiration, they mean it as a compliment. They mean it as a compliment. And I know why it happens. It's because of the lie. It's because we've been sold this lie that disability makes you exceptional. And it honestly doesn't. And I know what you're thinking. You know, I'm up here bagging out inspiration. You're thinking, geez, Stella, aren't you inspired sometimes by some things? And the thing is, I am. I learn from other disabled people all the time. I'm learning not that I'm luckier than them, though. I am learning that it's a genius idea to use a pair of barbecue tongs to pick up things that you drop. I'm learning that nifty trick where you can charge your mobile phone battery from your chair battery. Genius. We are learning from each other's strength and endurance, not against our bodies and our diagnoses, but against a world that exceptionalizes and objectifies us. I really think that this lie that we've been sold about disability is the greatest injustice. It makes life hard for us. And that quote, "the only disability in life is a bad attitude," the reason that that's bullshit is because it's just not true. Because of the social model of disability, you know, no amount of smiling at a flight of stairs has ever made it turn into a rap. Never. You know, smiling at a television screen isn't going to make closed captions appear for people who are deaf. You know, no amount of standing in the middle of a bookshop and radiating a positive attitude is going to turn all those books into Braille. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I really want to live in a world where disability is not the exception, but the norm. I want to live in a world where a 15-year-old girl sitting in her bedroom watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer isn't referred to as achieving anything because she's doing it sitting down. I want to live in a world where we don't have such low expectations of disabled people that we are congratulated for getting out of bed and remembering our own names in the morning. I want to live in a world where we value genuine achievement for disabled people. And I want to live in a world where a kid in year 11 in a Melbourne high school is not one bit surprised that his new teacher is a wheelchair user. Disability doesn't make you exceptional, but questioning what you think you know about it does. Thank you.
Okay, so when I first saw this video, it was it took me back a little bit, a variety of ways. And I wanted to share it today at the end of sort of this challenge, because I think we have to be cautious at all of the efforts that we're making to try and make things more accessible, that we're not somehow seeing that as a burden for an othered group of people, but that instead we are recognizing, I think this point that she made so beautifully, which is that that they're more disabled by society itself, and we are part of that, and that we have the power to make changes there. Before I go back to my slides, does anybody else have any kind of immediate reactions to that video, things that like stuck with them, or kind of thinking about that in the context of the challenge? You know, it's a lot to kind of chew on. So, all right, we'll go ahead and we'll kind of think about this back in terms of our general best practices around kind of creating a culture of accessibility. So let me share my screen again. So I showed this during this section that's about shifting perspectives, right? And I think that is really important. And one thing that I give everybody that has participated a lot of credit for is this idea of being open to questioning what you know and what you don't in this space. And so I think, am wanting to push you a little bit further on that. And that is to continue to kind of not just think about this in terms of the tasks that you need to change for emails that you send out, or in terms of changing a syllabus or changing your website, but to also be thinking about the way that we talk about disability and accessibility, the way that we communicate with our peers, the way that we talk about our commitment to this space. And this idea that we want to sort of view disability as another kind of form of diversity that we are embracing and that we are excited to have, and that we want to kind of make space for that as well. So there's a couple of, to do that kind of brings us into the fourth principle. And I think that sort of needs to be guided by these two questions that we've really been focused on. And that is, one, how can we create a more accessible and inclusive campus that minimizes the need for these targeted individual accommodations? And when needs go beyond that, how can we ensure that we've got an environment where people feel comfortable and know that they will still be welcome, they will still be included if they need to request additional accommodations and disclose their disability? And one of the best ways that we can do those things is to really think about language and kind of how we're talking about this. And we want to make sure that we are avoiding anything that paints a negative picture of disability, is patronizing, or perpetuates any kind of misunderstanding around it. So I've got a couple examples that I want to share. And the first one, and I do want to acknowledge something that I think sometimes when we talk about language or names or talking about diagnoses or group of people, it feels like a moving target. We don't know what is the current, acceptable term of the day, what is politically correct in some cases. So I'm going to be the first one to say that this is something that I feel like I need to learn more about anytime that I'm, talking about diversity or accessibility, any of these issues, that I have to challenge myself on this as well. So the first example that I want to give you is how we think about when we're talking about this particular community, how we speak about that, and sort of the terms of saying like the disabled or the deaf, the blind, the mentally retarded, by really kind of classifying these communities solely by whatever it is that makes them different in their disability is less appropriate. And if we're trying to sort of build a more inclusive culture around this. So instead, we want to focus on humanizing the people and focusing on those characteristics. And that's why you hear, I think, a lot of things related to things like people with disabilities, persons with a developmental disability, something to that effect would be more appropriate. At the same time, there's also the opportunity for us to learn here and ask people, because I think that there is still some debate around this about what people prefer or like. So being open to hearing that specifically from a person who is deaf or is experiencing some sort of temporary disability. Another example here is thinking about somebody that has a very, a visual kind of tool that they're using. In this case, saying somebody that is saying that they are wheelchair bound as opposed to a wheelchair user, right? Those are two things that are conveying sort of the same meaning, but with a different spin on them. And I really like the comment here in this one, which is that by saying that somebody is bound to a wheelchair, that really gives a false impression of what the purpose is. And users of wheelchairs find them to be very liberating and freeing. It allows them to move in ways that maybe they couldn't otherwise. So instead of kind of spinning it with that negative connotation by saying someone's confined or bound to a wheelchair, we can instead see it as more empowering. And the last example I'm going to give is one that I think is especially relevant for any of us who are working on our syllabi for spring. I know most of us have some required language that we put in there about accessibility resources on campus, and it can start to feel pretty, I would say, restrictive. And while we do want to include that information, you've got here, what the laws that we abide by and things like that. You can also imagine how much more clear of a communication you're making if you add in some information about what we value. And in this kind of small adjustment where you essentially state that in your classroom or in your organization or in an event that you're hosting, by stating that we value diversity and inclusiveness, we try to create environments that are more welcoming and accessible. We can include that same language and really convey a whole lot more about what our culture looks like, rather than just saying that we're complying with certain laws or regulations. And so on this part of it, I will leave all of you with another challenge, and that is to look at this in your the space where you have statements related to accessibility. Are you only including what's required, the sample by campus, or have you sort of thought and reflected on maybe a more inclusive approach to making a statement about what you value and why this is important to you? And if you don't, why not? I think that that's sort of a next step, is that if you're making your syllabus itself inclusive or accessible in terms of the Word document, we need to then start thinking about the content and what's actually being communicated as well. So with that, I do want to just comment on a few things, additional steps you can take, kind of what's next to move forward with this. Certainly, we recognize that this has been a whirlwind week, so we want to encourage people to finish up the challenge. If you skipped a day, go back. We will be kind of officially leaving the challenge open for an additional week next week, where you don't have to complete your final survey for the course until we'll leave that open until January 31st. So continue, kind of engaging with the material or watching recordings of sessions that maybe you missed, and start putting into practice the things that you've learned. We do want you to kind of do some reflection and think about kind of what you've experienced and kind of how that checks in with your own experiences in the classroom from whichever perspective that looks like, and share those with us in the post survey. If you, or rather when you complete the post survey, we will be opening that on Monday, but again, you have until the 31st to do that. As soon as you complete that, then that's what will trigger you getting the information on how to get your 10-day challenge certificate of completion. Everyone will get that emailed to them. And then we really are hoping to keep everyone connected. And so we are going to be ramping up our use of the Accessibility Practices Slack channel. That's where we'll be sharing news items, new resources, communicating, trying to kind of keep this dialogue going. And then we really are hoping that you kind of tell your colleagues and peers and classmates about this, share your experience with them, talk about this, bring us into different departments or units to share some of the things that we are able to. And we know that we've got more coming in this space. So there will be at least one more kind of, we're calling it a mini challenge on PDFs that will be during the spring semester, as well as potentially running something similar to what we've done here at another time down the road as well. Just a reminder, we do have one more drop-in session today in case anybody has any specific tactical questions. But beyond that, I guess I want to, again, stop sharing my screen and just ask some of your thoughts about sort of how we can sort of operationalize some of the things that we just talked about here on campus. How do you see some of these possibilities of creating a culture, shifting perspectives, changing, some thinking, creating more visibility? How do we see that possibly playing out, or what opportunities are there at Oswego for those things? Julie, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll pop in. I haven't been able to go to all the sessions, but the ones I've gone to have echo what Kristen said, have made me realize how much I don't know. But also made me realize how important it is. And so I have a retreat for SCMA faculty on Thursday, and I've asked Rebecca, and I hope Kate's going to be joining us, and the fellows to spread the word and impress upon my colleagues how important it is for us to do this. So I think the more we can get the word out, the better it is.
Thanks, Julie. We were so excited when we heard that you jumped on that, and just the opportunity to have that kind of visibility within the whole school is awesome. Any other ideas about how to carry this momentum forward?
Michelle, I'll just pipe in really quick. I had a question this morning about directing someone to the sign-up form, which of course is closed and does not allow for any more participants at this time. But I would suggest to forward any materials, share resources. Even though we don't have another challenge planned at this moment, there's going to be, as you did mention, a PDF focused one coming up hopefully in March. And then I would love to do another one that's very similar to this particular challenge in either April or May at some point later on in the spring. But yeah, in the meantime, direct people to the website. A lot of the information that we went on is at the accessibility website. As I've said repeatedly, that also contains all of the tutorials, a lot of the videos that you've seen in different presentations, steps on how to do things. So share the resources wide and far. Don't be afraid. That's what they're there for. That's what we spent the time making the website for. That's its purpose. So yeah, please feel free to share all those resources.
Thanks, Kate. Laura, you had something?
Yeah, I was just thinking that maybe considering the idea that there may be a person with a disability in your meeting, in your group, in your class, I think is just a good idea. I think that's something in the work group we've discussed, the idea that, and this is why I think that syllabus language is so important, that students may have a disability but may not report it to disability services or accessibility resources now, I believe. And just from my own observations, I'm hearing impaired and I have hearing aids, and I've actually, pre-COVID days, I was actually surprised to see how many other people had hearing aids. Like if I was sitting next to them in a meeting, I'd go, oh, you know, so, and I think that was only because I knew what I was looking for. So I think just keeping that in mind, that not all disabilities are visible, and that people may, I think even like sexuality, some people may be out and some people may not be. So.
Thank you, Laura. That's a great point and a really good comparison, I think. Other thoughts about how we can kind of build on this and keep it going forward? Julie, go ahead.
Again, sometimes our students are the best teachers for the faculty. So as we were talking today, I was thinking about this new integrated professional studies completion program that we are. And I was thinking that a course taught about about accessibility would fit in perfectly in that degree. And if we had that course and students started to take the course, they then could actually be the ones who push the faculty to pick up some of these skills.
Yeah, that's an awesome, really exciting idea.
I also wanted, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to say how great this whole 10 days have been. I have been from the Office of International Education and Programs, and I've been sharing a lot of the information with my coworkers. Some of them have also been attending some of the sessions, but all the sessions have been excellent, and we are looking forward to making changes on our website and making our materials more accessible as well. So very exciting time.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing that with your colleagues. And I think really the more people you have on the team to try and kind of pull in the same direction, certainly, lightens that lift a little bit. And I think finding those champions that can work with you, I think is really critical to that. Any final thoughts? All right, folks. Well, we really appreciate all of your participation. We encourage you to stay involved, stay connected with us, and keep your eyes open for anything we've got down the road. If, again, if you have questions, if you have new ideas, if you want to just continue the dialogue, join us in the 2:00 session. Or feel free to email any one of us that is part of the Accessibility Practices Workgroup. We are excited to broaden the participants in that group and encourage anybody who has been motivated or inspired to do more work in this area to get connected with us in a deeper way. That's all I have today. I don't know, Kate or Rebecca, either of you guys have any final thoughts in our last session?
I'll just say thanks to everyone who has participated. Thanks for everyone who's here right now, who have shown up to the presentations. And as we said in the beginning, the response was sort of overwhelming, and it's encouraging. And it's been really great to see how many people are really on board and have questions and really want to learn more. So it's encouraging that Oswego as an institution is going to continue moving in the right direction, and we can all do it together. And, you know, we're all learning all the way. So we'll get there, and we'll just continue to make everything better, a little bit at a time.
Thanks, Kate.
To me, it's pretty incredible to see the difference between workshops that we started 5 years ago and where things are now. So I really appreciate everyone's commitment to this work. And I highly want to thank and appreciate all of the members of the work group who have helped out to kind of get this organized. In particular, Kate, for actually really organizing the 10-day challenge. Michelle has been really important. Casey has helped out a lot. Dan, there's been so many people, and you've seen them pop in the chat and help regularly throughout the last couple of weeks. And so I hope that when you have the opportunity to say thank you, that you will.
All right. With that, everybody, we hope that you have an awesome rest of your afternoon, a great rest of your break if you're on break. And if there's anything that we can do to help you contribute to this culture across campus, please let us know.